what kills people today. It's all these chronic diseases like heart disease, certain cancers, diabetes, metabolic diseases. And the number one thing that you can do to prevent those is exercise, full stop. I mean, if a person exercises, it radically increases the odds that they are going to live not only a longer life, but that every year they have of that long life is better spent. It increases your mobility. It's linked to better mental health. I mean, it literally is the miracle drug. It's about the closest thing we have to that. Now, of course, it's hard in the short term, but like all things, you get that long-term benefit afterwards.
Joining us now on Open Book is Michael Easter. He's a New York Times best-selling author. The title of the book is Scarcity Brain: Fix Your Craving Mindset and Rewire Your Habits to Thrive with Enough. Michael, great to have you here. I'm a fan of both of your books, but you also have a great newsletter. I mean, this book is written for me, Michael. Let me tell you, I'm like a rat. I mean, I'm reincarnated dog, where I want to eat to the point of explosion, sleep, and have my back scratched. Or I'm probably like a rat in a maze. All I want to do is eat sugar. And I mean, it's just terrible. Pavlov's dog, exactly. Pavlov's rat, exactly. You know, I am the person you're writing about in the book. I bought the book, I read the book, and then I was like, well, I'm going to get the chance to talk to Michael. So, but let's start with the newsletter. Talk a little bit about your background. How the hell did you get into this?
Yeah, great question. Well, one, I'm glad you enjoyed the book. Thanks for having me. And then second of all, my background is that I worked in magazines for most of my career. So I was an editor at Men's Health magazine for a bunch of years. Then I left that role to be a professor and have just continued to write. But I think really my writing has always focused on, I would say, health, wellness, and psychology topics, but really looking at it from a sort of fundamental view of why do we do what we do? Why are we the way we are, and how can the past sort of inform the current behaviors that maybe don't seem to make sense?
Okay, so let's talk about that. So here's my brain. It's sort of like that 1980s commercial. This is your brain, and it's like they crack an egg, and they say, this is your brain on drugs, and then they fry the egg. We're basically, you know, there's a lot going on up here, right? I mean, there's a consciousness, but there's also primordial things that are running the thing, right? Mm-hmm. All I want to do is eat bad things. Also, Elon Musk might be right. We could be in a simulation because everything that I want to eat is bad for me.
Yes.
And everything that's supposedly good for me tastes like dog shit. So well, tell me what I got wrong, and tell me where we're going.
Well, I don't think you got anything wrong, to be honest. I think you're 100% normal for that reason. So the book, Scarcity Brain, it really looks at, you know, everyone knows that everything is fine in moderation, and yet we all suck at moderation. And so why is that? And it really unpacks sort of the evolutionary roots of the things that we crave, everything from the junk food you spoke about to the fact that we like to accumulate stuff, right? The average person today has more than 10,000 items in their house. Information, we love hoarding information, right? People are on Twitter all day, Elon Musk being a good test case of that. And also things like status, right? People crave status. They want to sort of have eyes on them. And all these things we crave, I argue in the book, it goes back to the fact that in the past, they would have given us a survival advantage and helped us survive, pass on our DNA. So if you were the type of sort of caveman who was like to overdo things, right? Didn't moderate, you would have survived and passed on your DNA. And we now still have that DNA in a world where we have enough of a lot of these things, arguably too much.
Okay. So how do I stop my sugar craving? Go.
How do you stop your sugar craving?
Yeah.
So here's what I will say is a lot of times that people will use sugar as a tool for something other than calories. And I will give myself an example. I found that when I would get stressed out, I would eat M&Ms. I would eat peanut M&Ms.
I love those.
Oh, they're so good. And food is really interesting because, you know, in the past, you know, for pretty much all the time, the job of life was to have some kids, find some food, and not die. Like we are very much wired to just seek food. If you don't eat, you die. But we now have so much of all this hyper processed food that is just really tuned in to make us eat more of it than I think we want, to crave it. And so it can become a sort of tool for something else. So another stat from my other book, The Comfort Crisis, that I love this stat, is that 80% of eating today is driven by reasons other than true physiological hunger.
Totally true.
Yeah.
I mean, Michael, I'm just going to let you know what a glutton I am. I'm never hungry. I'm eating and rummaging and stuff is going in like I'm Jabba the Hutt. I have,
You got to.
I
We
mean,
all have those days.
Yeah. 100%. All right. So let me ask you this, because I've been dying to ask you this. How did you're a great writer, by the way, and you've captured that Men's Health journalistic succinctness. Like you're giving really good actionable things to do in the book. But how did you get into this? Like, what was when you were growing up, you said, I always want to be a writer. And then how did you go from being a writer into health? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I grew up, single mom raised me. She was a voracious reader. We always had books around the house. And one day I picked up this book that she was reading called Into Thin Air by John Krakauer. And that book just grabbed me. And that was it. That was what I wanted to do with my life. So in that book, he chronicles this Everest expedition that he was on that went totally wrong. Handful of people died on the mountain. But just the way he wrote that story, the crispness of the writing, but also the fact that he could weave in these really informative pieces of information in a way that was not at all like what I was forced to read in my science classes, was just like I was hooked, and sort of became a magazine junkie, started reading a ton, and just decided to try and pursue it as a career, despite all the statistics telling me that was a terrible idea.
No, but you're good at it. And let me tell you, there's money to be made everywhere. One of the things about you is you have your own brand and you have your own equity. So you don't, you'll be just fine. I'm sure your newsletter is kicking ass. You have traveled the world. You've talked to innovators, scientists. Tell us about some of the people that you've met.
Yeah, I have the good fortune of definitely being able to talk to some brilliant people. And, my rule is just that the person has to be interesting, and they have to have something that, some piece of information that I think could enhance the reader's lives. And so whether it's from my books or my newsletter, which is called 2%, I'm always talking to interesting sources. So I've talked to Nobel Prize winners, I've talked to Super Bowl MVP winners, but some of the most fascinating conversations I have happen on a lot of my travels. So for example, in the comfort crisis, I spoke to this Buddhist Kenpo, which is kind of like a cardinal in the Buddhist faith, about that rank. And I've found really interesting people, like another character in my books and in my newsletters, a guy whose name is Trevor Kashey. And he looks like a Hell's Angel. He's about 29 years old, but he has this IQ that is, it's well over 160. And he's the most brilliant, succinct thinker I've ever met. And he runs a nutrition consulting business. And the amount of people that he's helped by just cutting through so much nonsense and just the clarity in his thinking, it's just amazing. And it's really given me this saying that I think everyone has an interesting story, has interesting stuff to share. You just have to ask enough questions and be willing to go there and meet them face to face.
Okay, so I'm reading a note from my producer about the comfort crisis, and you've got a tie-in between the scarcity brain and the comfort crisis. And so if you had to summarize those two books for us, what would you say?
Well, I would say when I started writing Scarcity Brain after Comfort Crisis, I didn't think they were related. But I since quickly found out that they are. And the Comfort Crisis is basically looks at what happened to us when our environment changed to one that is very comfortable, where we have easy, effortless access to food, stuff, everything we want, right? We live at 72 degrees. All these things, these advances, they're good in the grand scheme of time and space. But we also know that the things that most improve humans, they often take going through short-term discomfort, whether that's exercise, whether that's sitting with boredom rather than immediately reaching for the slot machine in your pocket, whether that's sitting with a little bit of hunger. And with Scarcity Brain, it really looks at, whereas Comfort Crisis looked at what have we removed, which is discomfort and the benefits of it. Scarcity Brain really looks at all this stuff that we've added in screen time. The average person spends 12 hours or more a day on digital media, food, possessions, and those systems that we have that used to help us survive really get co-opted in this wonderful new world we have.
Yeah. I mean, so there was a great book that Jeff Hawkins wrote. This has got to be 10 years ago. Maybe you heard of the book. He's the inventor of Palm Pilot. He's a contemporary of mine. Grew up out here on Long Island with me. We didn't know each other, but when he was out in Huntington, I was in Port Washington. But he said that the brain, the way it evolved, you have the front part, the neocortex is the new cortex, and then you have the subcortexes, which are more primordial. And so you've got a lot going on in your brain, a lot of animalistic, atavistic impulses, and then you have your self-awareness and your ability to look at yourself and observe the universe and obviously adapt and learn from the universe. Why is it so hard for the part of our brain that I would call the 160 IQ part of the brain? At least I don't have one, but your friend did. Why can't the really smart part of the brain have better control of the primordial part of the brain? Like right now, you've totally screwed me. I'm going to just tell you why, Michael. I want to run upstairs and I want to eat peanut butter M&Ms, and they are in my house. That's probably the biggest problem. I probably shouldn't have them there. Just let you know, you put it in my brain. I think my IQ's okay, pretty good, and I don't know if I'm not going to have them or not. I'm probably going to have them as soon as I get off this show with you. But go ahead. So what's wrong with me and what's wrong with us that we can't fight the primordial instincts inside us?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've cued myself to go eat peanut M&Ms after this as well. So the short answer is that doing the thing that was rewarding in the short term, the eating immediately, the grabbing the new item, the whatever it might be, that always made sense in the grand scheme of time and space, right? Because you didn't know if you were going to survive. You didn't know if you were going to have food tomorrow. That piece of information, clamoring over the next piece of information about someone, that could have saved your life, right? Because you don't know the intention of another person. So having sort of short-term impulsive thinking and actions made sense for all the time. And then now we find ourselves in a world where it doesn't quite make as much sense. We're still kind of driven to make that for evolutionary reasons. And it is a fight to kind of go, okay, well, I want to go eat, 10 servings of peanut M&Ms after this. And man, that would be fantastic. So I'm going to have to be willing to sit with this discomfort. Hopefully I can do it, of saying no to that and realizing that now, today, in order to live well, you have to make decisions that help you in the long term. So I'll give you a study that I love, that I think it sort of wraps this up. It found that 2% of people take the stairs when there is also an escalator available. 2%. So what does this tell us? It tells us that humans are wired to do the next easiest, most comfortable thing, even when it doesn't serve us in the long run.
Right.
Because 100% of those people knew that taking the stairs would give them a better long-term return on their health, maybe even their mental health. But 98% of people choose the short-term comfort and ease. And that is simply passed down to us from evolution, even though it doesn't make sense today to do the easy thing in every scenario. So my newsletter is called the 2% newsletter because it really takes that idea of the fact that humans are wired to choose short-term comfort, even when it hurts us in the long run, and that choosing to embrace discomfort in the short term can give you a long-term benefit.
Okay, it's very, very well said. And of course, Andrew Huberman, I believe, single-handedly has stopped a large swath of a younger generation than me from drinking. There's a lot of teetotaling going on, and I'm a Wall Streeter. I'm watching the earnings of some very big liquor companies go down, where they were rising, and there was tons of people drinking tequila and all this great stuff. And all of a sudden now they're doing this. Mm-hmm. And Huberman has explained to people what happens to your body under alcohol. And people are like, wait a minute, I don't know if I want that to happen. I can tell you this. I have this ring. It's an Aura ring. Mm-hmm. If I drink, this ring is like a nanny. This is like owning a nanny state on your finger. the nanny state alerts me that I'm a moron, and it says this is bad and this didn't go well, and my sleep was screwed up, and so stop drinking. I basically said, I'm not going to drink anymore. Why am I doing this to my body?
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on drinking, and where do you think drinking's going?
My thoughts on drinking are that if a person, so this one gets really complicated because when you look at big studies of population, drinking is often associated with health benefits so long as it's in moderation. And so then you go, okay, well, why is that? And the answer is that it's not the alcohol, it's what people do when they drink in moderation, which is that they socialize. So being social is very good. So I think personally that if a person is having, say, 1 or 2 drinks a couple nights a week, very importantly, in the context of being social, they're going to a bar, they're hanging out with
you're
people.
You're not sitting at your home bar.
Yes.
You come home, you're Don Draper, and you're popping like 4 martinis for dinner.
Exactly.
So no bueno, right?
Exactly. So if you're drinking in a way that's social, I think it's probably, I think it could potentially be a positive. At the same time, alcohol is a toxin. We don't need it. So I think really it just comes down to personal choice. But if a person does find themselves doing the Don Draper thing, that's probably worth having a hard conversation with yourself with.
All right. So drinking is not so bad, but you prefer to be social because you like when people are social, but obviously don't drink and drive. Okay. So you spent your entire career and you built all of this great research, all this learning into these books. What's one habit or lifestyle change that you believe you get the greatest return on investment?
Me personally, or the general population?
Both.
I don't know why I just asked you that because I think my answer would be the same for both. It would be exercise.
Exercise. Okay.
I think for me personally, it's the thing that keeps me sane. I'm a high wired person. As a kid, I was always running around. If I don't burn off steam, I just go a little wacko. And then when you look at, for the general population, when you look at what kills people today, it's all these chronic diseases like heart disease, certain cancers, diabetes, metabolic diseases. And the number one thing that you can do to prevent those is exercise, full stop. I mean, if a person exercises, it radically increases the odds that they are going to live not only a longer life, but that every year they have of that long life is better spent. It increases your mobility. It's linked to better mental health. I mean, it literally is one study that I love called exercise, the miracle drug. It's about the closest thing we have to that. Now, of course, it's hard in the short term, but like all things, you get that long-term benefit afterwards.
Okay, so I'm going to add something. I'm not great at it, by the way. So I'm a better exerciser than I am a sleeper. I have a hard time actually in bed because I'm always moving, ready to go. What do you think about sleep?
Very important. I also think that there's a lot of information out about sleep that can make it very confusing. I actually wrote a whole newsletter about this. It's on the website. I think it's called 8 Sleep Tricks That Actually Work or something like that. But I think the long story short of that piece is that a person has to find what works for them with sleep. So we hear a lot of rules like you must sleep in a blacked out room. You must absolutely sleep 8 hours a night. You must absolutely have silence. And it turns out when they do larger studies, sleep is very individual. Some people are great with 6 hours. Some people need 8.5. Some people actually do better with the TV on. Some people do better with a little bit of light, a little bit of sound. And so I do think that it's one of those things where people often can become anxious that they're not getting 8 hours when you might be actually best on 7. So kind of learning your own habits, a little bit of introspection, I think can be really useful for people around sleep.
Yeah, I think it's been a big thing for me personally. I can say that when I'm sleeping better, I'm thinking better. I'm also, my metabolism is better. And so people got to try to get into that habit. Okay. So what's the easiest change? Let's say that I am the laziest rat in the rat cage, in the rat maze, and all I think about are M&Ms, peanut M&Ms. What's the easiest change I can make?
I mean, I go back to that 2% stat, to be honest, and trying to figure out how can you translate that idea of doing what you're already going to do, but making it slightly harder and applying that across the board. So if you take the stairs and the escalator idea, It's like you have to get up to the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
You can either take the stairs or the escalator. One's going to give you a long-term return on your health and improve your life across the board. And another is just going to be nice in the short term, but could actually add to chronic disease.
So interesting because I have a boss. He's my old boss, who still thinks he is my boss. By the way, I'll point that out. But my old boss, Michael, is in good shape. He's 72. He's got me by 12 years, in very good shape. And I said, I am impressed. You're in very good shape. And he said to me something that I'll share with you. I want you to react to it. He said, you know what? I'm doing 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups a day. I don't care what day it is. I don't care what and if I can't do 100 in a row, I'm going to do 10 and then 10 and then 10 until I get to 100. And I do it every single day. What is your thoughts on that? Just the incremental few things to do if you can't do everything.
I love that because it tells us two things. One, his main thing is that he's consistent, right? He's doing it every single day. So a lot of people will go, oh, I'm going to exercise, and they'll do it for a week. They'll pick some big crazy plan. And then after a week, they're like, I can't really sustain this. So he's able to do it consistently. And then two is that he has found something that works for him, right? And I think that's a big key, is finding a type of exercise that you actually enjoy, because the best exercise, in my opinion, is the one that you will do consistently. And that often comes down to enjoyment. I like this guy.
Yeah. I mean, he's in good shape. He's in better shape than me. I've been doing 5 push-ups a day. I'm going to try to get it up there. Okay. I'm now at the point of my podcast. We pull out 5 ideas from your book. Call it our 5 famous words. I'm going to say the word. You're going to respond to me with comes to your head, the first thought that comes to your head. I'm going to say the word cravings. You say what?
I'm going to say ultra processed / junk food. So right. One part of the book, I went into the Bolivian Amazon because there's a tribe there that doesn't get heart disease. And heart disease is what kills Americans, by and large. And the reason these people don't get heart disease is because they don't eat all the super processed food we do, which is engineered to be craved and packed with calories. It all comes down to what they eat.
Okay. I'm going to say mindset.
My reaction to that is your mindset changes based on the conditions you put yourself in. In the comfort crisis, I talk about this idea that you can basically think of as problem creep. And this research found that as people experience fewer and fewer problems, we don't actually become more satisfied. We simply lower our threshold of what we consider a problem. And so as the world has gotten better, we have ended up with first world problems. And the answer to that, to build a mindset that can accomplish things, that can get through things, that doesn't complain and find problems, is to do things that challenge you, because that really resets the sort of goalpost.
Okay, I say fitness.
Simple definition of fitness is move your body and objects.
Okay, I say comfort.
My response is that comfort is good, but too much comfort is linked to all the things that make us sick, all the things that make us crazy, all the things that are associated with poor outcomes. So you got to balance comfort and discomfort.
So be comfortable with being less comfortable.
Yes.
Ultimately, right? Mm-hmm. You got to get comfortable with being in a little bit of discomfort if you want to stay healthy.
Yeah. It's a necessary buy-in.
All right. I say scarcity, Michael. You say what?
We used to live in worlds of scarcity, and now our worlds have shifted to abundance. So the ancient problem was scarcity, and the modern one is abundance.
And is that good or bad? Or a little bit of both, maybe. A little bit of both, right?
Little bit of both, right? I like the fact that after this podcast, you and I are gonna, go to the pantry and smash M&Ms.
Definitely having them, because I have a prehistoric brain, and I'm just slightly better at craving control than a rat in a maze. But I'm definitely going to have some. But the truth of the matter is, I've got to make sure I don't have too many.
Exactly.
Because then I'll be sluggish and I'll feel terrible and blah blah blah. But the points of your books are: get in the gym. Everything that you're feeling and you're fighting is part of your evolution. Is part of your survival. but think about it, switch your mindset about it, and get into some good habits incrementally, and you'll change your health. Is that the resonating messages?
Yeah. Do the great thing about living today is we have so much opportunities and we don't have to worry about running around in the landscape outside in the weather hunting our food. But because we don't do that, that also has downsides. And so if you can figure out ways to sort of do things that humans have been doing for all of time, that is to say, get outside, move your body, do challenging things, I think that you find that people are better off.
All right. Well, the title of the book is Scarcity Brain: Fix Your Craving Mindset and Rewire Your Habits to Thrive with Enough. It's by Michael Easter, New York Times bestselling author. I greatly appreciate you.
Russia, past, going all the way back to Stalin, are the past and present masters of disinformation. I had the privilege interviewing a former Czechoslovakian intelligence officer. He specialized in disinformation. And I asked him what you were doing in the 1960s compared to where we are now. And he just put his hands up in the air and said, this is the golden age for people. He said, what I used to do is I was a professional peddler of lies. I would seize upon targets in US audiences, race relations and domestic race relations in the US. He said, I would seize upon that and I would exploit it. And he said, this now social media environment that we're in would have been a godsend. I couldn't have even dreamed of something like that. So not only in terms of volume, it's easier and quicker, cheaper than ever before. It's quicker than all of those things than ever before in history to spread disinformation. But there's also this thing that's going on in the US, it seems to me, of just being willing to believe objectively false information.
So joining us now on Open Book is Calder Walton. He's a renowned intelligence and global security scholar. He's also a historian at the Harvard University Kennedy School of Government, which is obviously, I'm an alumnus of the law school there. Although when you bring that up, it's like humble bragging, so I'm not really allowed to bring that up anymore. But you wrote this amazing book, which we're going to get into right now, called Spies, the Epic Intelligence War Between the East and West. I learned so much in your book. I'm very grateful for you writing it, also the contribution of it. There's a lot to unpack there. But let's start with you. Why did you become so interested in intelligence and in the acquisition of military and civil intelligence?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me here, Anthony. It's great to be with you on Open Book. How did I get interested in this? Well, as an undergrad, I read a book called The Mitrokhin Archive, which was this expose about the secret history of the KGB. And it was written by the person that then became my doctoral supervisor, now friend and mentor, Christopher Andrew in Cambridge. And I went to him, and he's really the most incredible scholar and mentor, very humble. And he said, look, there's more research than we can possibly do in a lifetime on all of this. So if you want to do a PhD, you're pushing at an open door. So Anthony, that was just one thing that led to another. He then asked if when I was doing my PhD in Cambridge in England, he said, would you be interested in helping me write on a part-time basis, doing research for MI5's official 100-year history? I said, let me think about that for a minute. So that took about a nanosecond to say, yeah, that sounds like an incredible.
All right. So that begs the following question. Okay. Who does it better? Right? Nobody does it better. So is it MI5, MI6? Is it the KGB or the GRU as they're called now? Is it the CIA? Who does it the best?
I think that begs the question, what do we mean by it? If we're talking about stealing secrets, intelligence collection, the vast hoovering up of intelligence, you got to say that's the KGB historically. And who knows about Russia today, China today. They do it if we mean acquisition of intelligence.
Yeah, stealing of secrets.
Yeah,
application of military technology.
Exactly.
Knowing what we're doing before we know what we're doing.
That's it.
Right.
But if we're talking about if it means not only the collection of intelligence, but then analyzing it and disseminating it and getting it to decision makers that actually are going to listen to it, that's definitely not the autocratic regimes, Soviets in the past, Russia, China today. That's Western liberal democracies. And I'd say that Britain, I would say this, but being from the UK, but historically, the British intelligence community has punched far above its weight on the international stage.
Well, remember, they had the imperial system going as well, right? So
they had a few.
The Commonwealth.
That's right.
They've been able to use that system to their advantage, right? Ian Fleming and John le Carre explained that to all of us over the years.
And they were bang on. And the thing about John le Carre is that he was both an MI5 and an MI6 officer. He knew what he was talking about. But in terms of the today, the bulk capabilities, nothing can come close in the West to the U.S. intelligence community with its resources.
Right. Plus the
18 different agencies, Yes. So I think we've got Space Force now. And so, nothing comes close. NSA and GCHQ in the UK literally intertwined across the Atlantic with systems codependent. So
have you, I'm assuming you have. Have you ever looked at the Presidential Daily Brief, an archived one, or?
Yep. Okay. Yep, for sure. And they're declassified. Some of them are declassified and I used them in the book in the 1960s.
The declassified one. So I'm gonna say a couple things to you. I want you to react to these things because you're talking to somebody that when I read the brief for the first time, I was alarmed by the brief. I'm going to say three things to you. I want you to react to all three. Okay. The CIA analyst that briefed me, he said to me that there are work horses in the government and show horses in the government.
Okay.
And you'll know very quickly who the work horses are, Anthony, and who the show horses. Do you agree with him?
Well, you always need to. I'm going to sort of try to put it perhaps in more diplomatic terms. You always need to have the people that are at the front of the house and then the back of the house. Right. But I can see where you're going with this. Right. I think I know who perhaps the rest of the intelligence community would probably regard the CIA as the show horse. Is that right?
Yeah, I think so. I do think so. Okay. Yeah. Because you've got a lot of stuff going on.
We also say that presumably a lot of, as usual, people that call others show horses, there might be a tinge of jealousy there. Let's perhaps say that.
Right. Okay. Well said. The other thing that was said to me, and I want you to react to, is that, man, here's what we think we know, but a lot of stuff in that brief is proportioned, meaning it's percentages. We have a 50% chance that this is correct. We have a 70% chance that this is correct. It's not like Hollywood, Calder, where, okay, bin Laden is in the house and here's how we know, and now we're going to send a SEAL team to get him. I mean, there was a lot of vagary and a lot of uncertainty in the decision-making process. Is that correct based on your research?
Both historically, and I have to say that is really good to hear in a weird way, and I'll explain why. The worst thing to do would be to be presenting analysis and to give the customers, in this case you, a false sense of the...
No, there was none of that.
Exactly. No, if it's intelligence, if we're in the intelligence business, there aren't certainties. This operates in an area of gray, right? And I think that the yardstick of a decent analysis is being honest and saying, we just don't know. This might be a 51% chance, 49% chance, what have you. As long as the customer, you, is aware of the risk inherent within that analysis of we are operating within the gray. As you said, it's not like Hollywood where it's there have been, let's be honest, some in the recent past, some extraordinary intelligence failures on the part of the CIA on briefings. Sure. George Tenet's slam dunk, we all remember that about WMD. That's an example of where the caveats about the reporting and the analysis are airbrushed out, and it's presented in a way that doesn't reflect the the risks inherent. So that's reassuring to me from my perspective that you were given all those health warnings.
So that's part of it. Going to keep going here if you don't.
Can I ask follow up though? I mean, did that then lead I imagine as a customer it might be well, why are you giving me this then if you don't know what the?
That's interesting because what I would say, and what was said to me in sort of the preamble of the briefing was that there's just so many things that we don't know, but these are the things that we're worried about, or these are the things that are going to reach the president's desk, where he's going to have to make a decision, or in some day she will have to make a decision. But you're going to be making this decision, with some shots being fired in the dark. You won't actually know, and we don't actually know. And so all of that's accurate, right? I think this is important for our listeners and viewers because I want them to read your book. I'm going to give away some of the plot lines in your book, but I want them to read your book because your book is so compelling about the reality of the situation, not the fictionalized stuff that people will read or even watch in the movies.
Yeah.
You've got, real life situations going on, life and death situations. And what we both know is there's a lot of guesswork in it. Isn't that the case, Calder?
That's absolutely, you summarized it really well, Anthony. So it's, if it, two levels, the world of espionage and this wilderness of mirrors, as it's been called, nothing is 100%. So the yardstick for on the US side, the yardstick for the most confidence you can have in an assessment is, I believe the phrase is highly confident, or not even very high confidence.
Yes.
It's something like this, okay? So which to the layperson doesn't actually sound that, it's not, I mean, you're a lawyer, you remember, Anthony, I'm a recovering lawyer as well, I should say. But you remember the legal, it's not close to beyond reasonable doubt.
No.
That level.
No. Yeah,
we're groping in there, and this is what we think seems likely to happen. That's the reality of intelligence. And the other thing is, of course, if an assessment, if a problem lands on the president's desks, as the phrase goes, it's never going to be an easy decision. It's only the tough things land on the president.
Exactly, because it would have been resolved by one of the other 5,000 people in his government.
Precisely.
And so, and then the last thing from the first briefing that I had was it's always a tough decision. And so it looked prima facie that the capture and the death of Osama bin Laden and the capture of the intelligence assets from his home was a net positive, but it also had consequential collateral damage. We upset a sovereign nation, Pakistan.
Yep.
We probably had to give them more aid as a result of that. Yep. We also upset the region because it's a very tough neighborhood. Yep. You don't want the U.S., who's perceived to be an imperialist, going into sovereign nations without their permission.
Yep.
And so that set alarm bells off in the Middle East and probably set us back diplomatically. So every time the president's making a decision or she's making a decision, there's some good things that can come out of it, but there's also going to be some collateral damage. Is that a fair statement based on your assessment?
Absolutely. I think that time and time again, we see throughout history is particularly the US with all of its power and might, during the Cold War, does something in order to solve a particular problem. And then that sets off a cascade of not even known unknowns, unknown unknowns, and again, I think that's the duty of the intelligence community, is to warn about what are likely future scenarios where there could be what we're talking about here, Anthony, is like thing of blowback, where one thing leads to a succession of other events, and then it blows back on the U.S. in some way or another.
Right, exactly. So we always have that. We always have that risk. Okay. So in the 1930s, I don't remember the exact date, but Henry Luce, who was the founder of Time magazine, was in Russia. This predates the war. Mm-hmm. Okay, but Stalin is now in charge. Trotsky is dead. He is talking with him at dinner. Yeah. He says he's going to smash the United States into 1 million pieces. And Luce says, well, how are you going to do that? He said, well, you don't understand. I'm going to use the KGB. I'm going to use our disinformation programming. I'm going to use the wave of lies. You're a mongrel nation. You're not unified by one race or one genealogy. There's multiple bloodlines, and a result of which there's a lot of ethnic and tribal hatreds in your country. And I'm going to smash you to smithereens using this campaign of disinformation. We won't need to take over the United States. The United States will fall from within.
Wow.
Now, what he got wrong at the time was the love that my grandparents had for the country, immigrating from Italy and others. What he got wrong is that they were all focused on their own economic aspirational opportunity and less on hating upon each other, although there was biases and prejudices, as there has been tribally for time immemorial. Okay, what he also got wrong was the great unification that the U.S. would have during the war and then
Yeah.
in the post-war environment.
Yeah.
And since we talk about stovetops in your book and chimney, stovetops coming out of the houses,
Yeah.
we were stovetopped into the media where it was fairly centralized.
Yeah.
So the information that was washing over the United States was fairly centralized. So we all had uniform
Yeah.
or mainstream ideas.
Yeah.
But that's no longer the case. You and I know that Prigozhin, who is now part of the Wagner Group,
Yeah.
one of Putin's old chefs, very well chronicled in the book by Catherine Belton,
Yeah.
Putin's People.
Yeah.
He develops these server farms and creates these core identities.
Yep.
And he uses this age-old theory from Stalin,
Yep.
from the KGB, to create tribal disinformation, ethnic hatreds,
Yep.
sow unrest in the United States, push the Brexit agenda on the UK citizens, make them feel
Yep.
nationalistic, make them feel racial sympathies
Yep.
towards themselves and against others.
Yeah.
He's doing the same thing in France. And because of this splintering of the media, it now seems to be working. What Stalin said was going to work 100 years ago, Calder's, that didn't work, but it now seems to be working. What's your reaction to all that?
Well, I don't. So I agree with what you've just said. I don't know the specific about Henry Luce in the Soviet Union, but what Stalin was talking about, and then was been repeated by subsequent Kremlin leaders. These are the so-called Soviet active measures. This is what
Exactly.
in the US what we would call, or in the covert action. So these are dirty tricks, political warfare we call it, and Russia past, going all the way back to Stalin, probably even the Tsarist regime actually, are the past and present masters of disinformation. So I had the privilege when I was writing the book, interviewing a former Czechoslovakian intelligence officer who defected to the US in 1969, just after the Prague Spring. He saw the Soviet tanks rolling in and said, I need to get out of here. He specialized in the Czech intelligence service that worked for the KGB, essentially as a satellite service. He specialized in disinformation. And I asked him, okay, so with this, what you were doing in the 1960s and even before, compared to where we are now, and he just put his hands up in the air and said, this is the golden age for people. He said, what I used to do is I was a professional peddler of lies. I would seize upon targets in US audiences, like you just mentioned, Anthony, that Stalin said, race relations and domestic race relations in the US. He said, I would seize upon that and I would exploit it. And he said, this now social media environment that we're in, would have been a godsend. I couldn't have even dreamed of something like that. So not only in terms of volume, it's easier and quicker, cheaper than ever before, as Prigozhin and his troll farms revealed. It's quicker than all of those things than ever before in history to spread disinformation. But there's also this thing that's going on in particularly here in the US, it seems to me, of just being willing to believe objectively false information.
Yes.
Okay, so that's changed, and I don't know if that is the social media environment of something's going on in our sort of cognition. That's something for like behavioral scientists, psychologists to get into.
No, it's interesting. I mean, all of that seems to be happening contemporaneously while we are trying to fight back the beast, right? Because you and I both know that we've got to be right 1,000%, right? We have to go. We had to bat 1,000. We have to be right every time. They only have to be right once.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Okay.
An impossible task, I would say.
Okay. So let's go to your book. Okay, which is a fascinating book about this war between the East and West. I want to address Vladimir Putin for a second.
Yeah.
Is Putin the master spy of the narrative that he conjured up for himself?
Oh, it's a great question. I would argue absolutely not. So he makes much of his KGB past, that he worked for the KGB's Foreign Intelligence Department, the first chief directorate. He was stationed in Dresden, as your listeners may be aware, and he witnessed firsthand, the story goes, of the collapse of the Soviet Union around him. Okay, so he has made much of this in the 1990s, and then when he got into power. In fact, Dresden was a sideshow for the KGB in East Germany. The real action was up in Berlin. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is I've got it on very good authority from a CIA source interviewed on the condition of anonymity that he has good information, reliable information, that Putin wanted to become a deep cover, so-called illegal. Okay, this is the Russian, Soviet, and Russian deep cover operatives, like in the series, like in the TV show The Americans that you may have seen. Great show, by the way.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He wanted to become one of them and failed the language test. So since then, he's tried to peddle this image of both him as a master spy and then also as the KGB as the sort of master intelligence service. It was second to none in the world in terms of intelligence collection, stealing secrets, bribing people, exploiting them, you name it, blackmail. But in terms of analysis, the whole system never allowed for robust telling truth to power. You see that from Stalin's time through to Putin today. And I think, so let me put it this way. Putin, his foreign intelligence director at the moment, the SVR, which is the successor to the KGB, his foreign intelligence director, Sergei Narishkin, is also the head of Russia's historical society. So that's like the director of the CIA being the head of the American Historical Society. What's going on there? Well, what's going on there is some pretty weird use of history and making Russia's intelligence services in the past seem more successful than they were. You scratch the surface, not only is Putin not the master spy that he wants to be, but also some of the massive Soviet intelligence successes in the past, they were actually owed more to the dedication of the communist agents handing over secrets that they had than the tradecraft of Russia's intelligence services. And we see it, Anthony, we see it closer to our own time with Russia's intelligence services. After 2016, there was a perception and Russian election meddling, not getting into the whole thing of like the actual impact of that on the election, but it was certainly unambiguously the case that Russia was on Putin's orders trying to do that. After that, we had some narrative, particularly in the US, of sort of Putin as the master puppeteer. But actually, there's been a succession of incredible Russian intelligence failures under his watch. Deep cover spy networks being wound up. And then the most disastrous decision that he made that seems pretty clear to me is an intelligence failure is his decision to invade Ukraine in 2022. This is a colossal intelligence failure, and Putin is primarily responsible for it.
Is he winning or losing that war?
Ukraine, to be determined, I'm afraid. Here's the thing that look at what's happened just yesterday. Sweden's joined NATO, so his master plan doesn't seem to be working out. But I still agree with what CIA Director Bill Burns said at the outset of the war, which is this is a war that Putin can't afford to lose. Okay, he's nailed his reputation to it. It's everything. He's not gonna. I don't see how he's gonna allow this to go badly for Russia, and I fear my worst fear is about the use of a tactical nuclear weapon to get a victory out of a defeat. So the better that Ukrainians do, the more encircled Putin feels now by NATO, the more the chances I think he's going to do something drastic. And I'm particularly worried about the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant.
Yeah, well, I know they've been calling on that now for several months because of all that. But let me just ask you this: do you feel? I want to phrase this properly. Is he in peril now No matter what the outcome is,
Mm.
because it has not really gone well for him optically, not in the world of public opinion,
Yeah.
not in the internal unrest been displayed in the Soviet
Yeah.
Union, for the Russians, former Soviet Union, also the Prigozhin situation. Has he
Yeah.
been sufficiently personally imperiled at this point?
For his rule, I mean, he's certainly been damaged. But again, he's not gonna. It's not like we're just gonna see Putin go, okay, well, you know what, that was a mistake.
No, he can't. He can't afford to do that.
Can't
No, we
afford it.
know that.
The maker and the breaker in this whole situation will be China. So I don't think actually Putin. You mentioned, in terms of the perception internationally, sure, this is a catastrophe from our perspective for Putin. Why would he do this? But
Right.
then there's a lot of, first and foremost, it's the maker and the breaker of whether it's a failure or not will be Xi in China. And then look at the non-aligned, so-called non-aligned countries, the global south and their perceptions, a lot of whom are sitting on the fence. So it's not, you talk to others from other places in the world outside of, Europe and North America, it's not as clear cut as the conversation that you and I have just had, I think.
This is a tremendously cynical thing to say, but bear with me. Success for Joe Biden?
Is it a success for Joe Biden of where the war is going?
What has unfolded over the last, call it, a year and a half?
Yeah, I think that it's been remarkable to see U.S. leadership again. And I speak, I speak as a European.
Yeah.
And it's just like, where was America for so long? We don't need to get into that, Anthony, but that whole period. But I mean, it's like,
we can get into it because, here's what happened. We both know it. When Clinton left, we had still very high standing in the world. Yep. He was producing a budget surplus.
Yeah.
He was running the world off the George Kennan bipartisan commitment to leadership and freedom and containing autocracies around the world to the best of his capability. And Bush and Cheney, they blew it to pieces because they got the gun off the bird going into Iraq.
Yep.
Big intelligence failure there, but it was also designed to help President Bush win re-election. They wanted that war.
That's right.
And they wanted that war before before Labor Day of 2003 because they wanted him to get reelected.
That's it.
Okay. And so they knew that would galvanize the American people. And so this is unbelievable levels of cynicism. And you and I both know this, but maybe some of our listeners need to hear it again. We went to war without a tax increase, the first time in U.S. history that we created a war like that without a tax increase. And we blew a hole in our budget that we never recovered from. We're $25 trillion into that budget deficit now as a result of that bad strategic planning.
Yep.
And allowing the Congress to lose the fiscal discipline. And unfortunately, and this saddens me, but you and I both know people in the agency. This is right out of the writings of bin Laden. Bin Laden said in 1998, 99, he'd hit America.
Yep. America
would overreact, spend trillions of dollars bombing mud huts and sand pits, and he would weaken the American empire.
Yep.
And so right now he's dead, but it's probably 3-0 bin Laden, top of the 5th inning.
Yeah.
Because everything he said that we were going to do, we did. And we have a more divided country. We have the Patriot Act, which gives us less civil liberties. We have this national security state and the NSA overseeing everything, which may or may not make us safer in some ways, but certainly less free. So here we are. What am I missing, sir?
No. And then you throw in the economic disaster of 2008 into the mix.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to just also pick at a thread that the way that you've just laid it all out there, that for Putin, I mean, the damage that the decision to go to war in Iraq has caused, not just for US foreign policy and perception of the US, but also for people around the world like Putin, who saw the US involved expressly in regime change. And you look at Putin's speeches from back then, once the honeymoon period of war of counterterrorism was over, and it was over pretty quickly, by the way, with Putin's regime. What could he point to? He said, well, this is a regime that just does what it wants, the US. And if you look at Putin's Munich security speech in 2007, he's calling for an overhaul of the post-Cold War international security system. He said that the US is an empire. It's using freedom and democracy as a way to boss other countries around. He says that's not true democracy. This is, Anthony, it's basically the same speech as he gave on the eve of the war in Ukraine with Xi, that joint conference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's been saying the same thing. So we can't actually criticize. Like all dictators, there's a logic there, okay?
Of course.
And you don't have to. I mean,
the best propaganda has a kernel of truth, right?
Yeah, right.
Doesn't the best propaganda have a kernel of truth?
There's a logic. You have to be able to understand the mindset.
Right.
And for me, as you've pointed out, so much of this turns on the war in Iraq, and it goes back to that and that decision of, as the British government, the head of MI6 at the time flew over to Washington in the spring of 2003 and came back, wrote a report back. It's now all out in this public inquiry in the UK, the Chilcot report, and said they're going to go to war. They've already made the decision and they're fixing the intelligence around it.
Right.
So that's a catastrophe of intelligence, allowing, where was the failure on both sides, both decision makers cooking the intelligence, looking for things, fruit picking it, and then the intelligence community with that, for example, as we all know, this source that was the one source curveball. I mean, who has one source for anything?
Right.
And just the idea that we would use that. So it was a failure across the board, failure on intelligence collection, failure on intelligence analysis, failure of dissemination, and then an abject failure on the part of decision makers that are already going to do what they wanted to do. It seems to me.
So you obviously, I could let you go forever because you're a brilliant guy and I'm enjoying the conversation, but these podcasts unfortunately do come to an end. I have 5 words that I'm going to say the word. You can have a 1-word reaction, a paragraph reaction. Okay. I'm going to say the word. I want to get your immediate reaction. Okay,
I'm in the hot seat here, aren't I?
You're in the hot seat. You're in the hot seat. You ready?
Hit me.
Russia.
Yeah. Russia problem. So we've got a Russia problem. We haven't got a Putin problem.
Right.
Okay. That's my reaction, is that we need to understand that if Putin disappears, the chances are he's going to be replaced by somebody who thinks very similarly to him.
Yeah. Yeah. And we you remember Halford Mackinder,
mm-hmm.
Right? And so Mackinder basically, so he was an Oxford Don.
Yeah.
He was knighted in the mid-19th century, said you can't let any one country control the entire Eurasian continent. It'll be a disaster for the West. You can't let the Russians link up with the Chinese.
Right.
And if you read our State Department documents or your Foreign Service documents, we're all concerned about that 200 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. the USA.
In a terrible crisis. Divided. We need to learn how to agree to disagree with each other again.
China.
Unprecedented intelligence challenge, threat to U.S. national security.
Yeah, that was the biggest. So that was my biggest takeaway from your book, is that I haven't spent enough time understanding the magnitude of what they're working on in terms of the way they're absorbing information. Frankly, the people that they put on the street here is overwhelming, including the police departments that they have in our own country,
But then also, Anthony, I mean, in your other field, in commerce and business, the Chinese national security laws, basically Chinese business with the outside world, you have Chinese intelligence working as a silent partner. There is no such thing as a truly independent Chinese venture. And I think that this is this is the key to understanding the Chinese espionage threat that we face in the US. Is
No
it
question.
wasn't just it's not just about spy agencies. It is cross domain, and the thing is, this isn't. I'm not actually very political. This isn't a right thing or a left thing. This is just, you just look at and you speak to people in the FBI, and they're like opening an investigation into China every 12 hours.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is out of control.
So we, as you point out in the book, the Cold War's still on. 2 more words. Ready? Great Britain. Your alma mater, your former country.
Yeah. I was actually born in this country, so I have a healthy view on both. In a not as bad a situation as the US, but not in a great place. Struggling to find a place in the world. There's a phrase, an English phrase called plodding along, and I think Britain is plodding along at the moment, trying to figure out what it stands for again after Brexit.
Yeah. Well, I have a love affair with your former country. I enjoyed my time there. Intelligence, Cold War, the Cold War, Cold War,
new Cold War on at the moment between the West and what we stand for, and Russia and China. Intelligence undergoing a revolution, and the future of intelligence is not clandestine services, that kind of thing. It's open source, commercially available intelligence. And what intelligence agencies are trying to figure out at the moment is how to exploit that. How do they link up with, there are outfits like Bellingcat, that are doing fantastic open source reporting and intelligence agencies are saying, okay, it's a game changer. How do we then incorporate that and provide a margin to our customers and government? So intelligence undergoing a massive revolution at the moment.
Well, you've been very generous with your time. I'm very grateful to you for coming on. Your book is spectacular. The author, Calder Walton, of Spies, the Epic Intelligence War Between East and West. I enjoyed our time together. My producer's going to be a little bit mad at me that I didn't go that in depth into the book, but I want my viewers and listeners to read the book. And I think listening to you speak about these issues will encourage them to go out and buy the book, which I did and I loved, and which is why I reached out to you. And thank you for accepting my invitation.
Are you kidding? Thank you. The pleasure was all mine. It was really great, and hope to carry on the conversation going forward.